I'm sort of mulling over something that you said, Steve, about the importance of sort of like having narratives to kind of like give context to the lecture. Yeah. So you said something about like where the info is coming from, where it's going, like how it kind of builds off of the previous lecture. And I'm thinking about it in two contexts. So I'm thinking about it in terms of like statistic classes that I've taken, where it feels very like the instructors really struggle to like make those connections from one lecture to the next. So it seems like, when I've taken those classes, it just feels like each day of lecture, we would be introduced to almost what felt like totally different material, even though I knew that, each day we were building kind of the building blocks to like more complicated statistical problems and stuff. And that was very different from the experiences that I had in my humanities classes, and specifically in like literature classes, where, of course we would have like different pages of a book that we would have to read for every lecture, but the faculty were very deliberate about making sure that over the course of the entire semester, they were actually building an argument that, that had like, 32 different parts, because we had like a 16-week semester. So even though they talked about different themes, they talked about different topics, it was all building towards something. And that process of discovery, Cynthia, that you were saying, I loved going to those lectures because it was like each day we were like, what's the story going to be this time? Like how is this going to build off of what we were talking about last week?
Right.
How is this, like, how are they going to bring back this theme that they talked about like 3 weeks ago and help us to like look at it from a different angle? So I don't know. I think that there are ways to do that in science and math courses. Because I don't specialize in those areas, I'm just not sure how, but I also realize how important my humanities background and my literature background has been, because it's actually given me kind of this foothold into understanding different ways that learning can happen very effectively, and ways that narration can actually create really meaningful learning experiences, but also empower students. So Cynthia, earlier you were talking about, like looking at keywords, right? So you were talking about nature in Darwin's text. And as you were talking about that, it just reminded me of, when I was in my English classes, close reading as kind of like the skill that we were learning, in addition to other skills as well, like historical analysis and theory and that kind of thing. But close reading was like the bread and butter of being an English major. And because of that, every student had an entry point into becoming engaged in the material. So it didn't matter what you were close reading, you just had to know how to close read. And then anything that you found of interest could actually be the starting point for a paper or a question, or, just like, an entry point into office hours where you could ask a professor to like explain this thing that you had noticed, but you didn't know what to make of it. And it just, we're talking about transactional learning as well. And it just makes me very worried that as we get further into transactional learning and thinking about education in terms of landing a particular job or being marketable, we start losing sight of all of these sort of like all of these benefits that can't be quantified through a job or through economic gain or through like professional advancement, but that do help with the ways that we understand the world and understand our position, and also feel like we have something to contribute or say about the experiences that we're going through. And there are lots of researchers who talk about this, and a lot that's been written about this, but the humanities are sort of a central part of making that kind of work possible.